Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. If you want to prevent illness, if you want to thrive, if you want to know what the latest medical research is telling us about the diet and lifestyle pathways that have been proven to support optimal health and well-being, then you're in the right place. Today, our focus is on how lifestyle medicine can transform your life. And the truth is, right now, we're in a health crisis, but it didn't start with the pandemic. It's been building for decades. It costs us trillions of dollars and millions of lives worldwide every single year. And the good news is it is almost completely preventable. As you're going to see today, Dr. David Katz draws on the latest scientific evidence that's backed up by thousands of studies in the most reputable scientific journals, showing us how we can implement diet and lifestyle to support optimal, thriving health. We're talking about reversing every major chronic disease of our times: heart disease, cancer, stroke, type 2 diabetes, dementia, obesity, and more by up to 80%. Now, I want to be very clear here. Nothing you hear today is medical advice. This is coaching. This is us sharing our own best insights. But of course, you should always consult with a qualified healthcare professional about your specific medical issues and needs. That said, you're going to learn a lot today. Now, this event is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. This week, we're hosting action hours with Dr. David Katz today, Monday with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, and Wednesday with Dr. Kim Williams. Whole Life Club paid members get access to all of our action hours, including transcripts and the chance to submit questions in advance, as well as weekly recipes, action of the week videos, monthly live events on Zoom, a community of support, and a lot more. So if you stay to the end, I'm going to tell you more about how you can join in with a special opportunity just for this week. But right now, we want to talk about how lifestyle medicine can transform your life. So let me introduce our amazing guest. David Katz, MD, is a preventive medicine specialist and a globally recognized authority on lifestyle medicine. He's the founding director of the Yale Griffin Prevention Research Center, past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and founding president of the True Health Initiative. It's a coalition of more than 500 world-renowned physicians, scientists, and nutrition experts from 45 nations committed to establishing and communicating the scientific consensus on the optimal diet for human beings and the planet. My dad and I are proud members of True Health Initiative. David is the recipient of 3 honorary doctorates and the author of 18 books, including his latest, How to Eat, which he wrote with Mark Bittman. So, David, welcome.
Ocean, great to be with you. Thanks for the kind intro, and great to be in the mix with Will and Kim. It's a terrific lineup.
Absolutely, it is. Well, let's start by stating the obvious. Food and lifestyle matter. And despite all the confusion so many people have about what really is healthy and what's not, the truth is serious researchers are not actually all that confused about what humans should be eating. So tell us, what do you think most thoughtful researchers agree on when it comes to diet and lifestyle?
Yeah, no, this is a truth that's been hiding in plain sight for decades, Ocean. And there's a cottage industry in propagating the notion that we're confused, that no 2 nutrition experts can agree. And I've seen this from many angles, including when I worked on air for ABC News Good Morning America. And there was really an incentive to cover a different diet, usually a silly celebrity-endorsed diet or a fad diet every week, and pretend like everything we knew about diet last week was obsolete. And exactly the opposite is true. And there are all sorts of ways to gain that perspective. One that I like very much is the work of our friend Dan Buettner in the Blue Zones, where nobody is watching morning shows to figure out how to eat this week. They eat like their great-great-grandparents. Everybody's been eating the same way for generation after generation. They routinely live to be 100. They don't get chronic disease. So, if you take that perspective, what happens to whole populations of people in diverse cultures around the world over the span of generations? And then you append what we know from mechanistic studies about glycohemoglobin, studies about blood lipid levels, studies about blood pressure. If you then take the big prospective cohort studies, like the Nurses' Health Study, the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, the American Cancer Society, many others that have looked at what happens to people over extended periods of time, the Framingham Study, which was sort of the granddaddy of them all, the work of Ansel Keys, a vast, diverse body of literature over the last half century and more. You get the same answer every time. Michael Pollan got it down to 7 words: eat food, not too much, mostly plants. That really is the message. So real food direct from nature, the more of that, the better. The more stuff you eat that has an ingredient list of just 1 word, the better. We can talk about why. And then plant predominant. Now that can be plant exclusive for those who are willing to go all the way, because we can absolutely thrive on plant exclusive diets, but everybody needs to be moving in that general direction. Better for human health, better for planetary health, kinder and gentler to our fellow creatures. Everything about it is good. And in 2 very specific contexts, I've had the privilege of garnering the global consensus on these matters. So, and I like to talk about the truth about food and lifestyle as medicine at the confluence of science, sense, and expert consensus. So one was a conference in Boston in 2015, sponsored by Old Ways. Walter Willett and I co-chaired. And we basically brought together dueling nutrition experts, some who represented the dairy industry and some who represented meat, but to kind of present our cases, but then in between sessions, work toward the consensus. And we had no trouble saying we agreed about 90% of everything. And it was eat real food, mostly plants. The paleo experts agreed. The people who had done careers devoted to looking at health effects of eating meat agreed. Everybody agreed. And we published that online. And then you kindly mentioned the True Health Initiative. And again, I'm honored and delighted that you and your dad are members of the council. But as you say, over 45 countries, 500 experts, paleo to vegan, but everybody's saying, in a world of 8 billion hungry Homo sapiens, it's not as if we're going to grab a bow and arrow and eat the occasional antelope anymore, right? If you eat meat, it's bacon and pepperoni. Clearly, in this modern world, for the sake of people and the planet and our fellow creatures, plant predominant real food diet is the way to go. All the science says so. All the sense says so. And truly, there is global consensus among experts.
Thanks, David. That's very helpful context. I often use this metaphor that if you drive your car into a brick wall, the death certificate might say impalement by brick wall. But the truth is, it was bad driving that was the cause of death. And I think somewhat similarly in the modern world, we have death certificates like heart disease or cancer or dementia or various other ailments. And in some ways, those are not really the cause of death. They are a symptom that led to death. But the real cause of death was diet and lifestyle. And we see this because the same diet and lifestyle patterns impact all of these ailments at once. Do you see it similarly?
I certainly do. And this actually addresses an issue, Ocean, that is singularly responsible for the trajectory of my career. So I mentioned in my prior answer that this truth about diet and lifestyle as medicine, the consensus, has been hiding in plain sight for decades. So let's go back those decades, almost 3 decades to 1993. For me personally, that was the year I completed my training in preventive medicine and public health at Yale. Within a few months of my graduation, a paper came out in the Journal of the American Medical Association addressing exactly what you're talking about now. And the paper was entitled Actual Causes of Death in the United States. And this was the very point that Mike McGinnis and Bill Foege, 2 preeminent epidemiologists, made. What gets listed on a death certificate is the proximal cause of death. So, in your analogy, when you hit the brick wall, it's the collision with the brick wall. But why did you drive into the brick wall? What could have been changed? Was there a problem with the construction of the car? Was it too frail? Was the driver intoxicated? What went wrong that led to the crash? The crash, yes, was fatal, but that was an effect of something, not really a cause. Well, McGinnis and Foege said the same about heart disease, cancer, stroke, dementia, diabetes, respiratory disease, basically all the plagues of modern living that are responsible for premature death. Said, what's causing that? What causes the heart disease? What causes the diabetes? What causes the dementia, the strokes, the cancer, and so on? So they did an analysis that basically accounted for almost all of the premature deaths in this country every year. and concluded that we could modify underlying factors like, in fact, driving and speed limit, or driving under the influence laws and enforcement, and engineering to improve the safety of cars, and exposure to toxins and drug use, but mostly lifestyle factors, that modifiable things would actually eliminate almost all of the premature deaths that occurred in the United States every year, and by extension, the modern world. What captured my imagination as a newly minted preventive medicine specialist was that just 3 things out of their list of 10 collectively explained 80% of the total burden of chronic disease and the total risk of premature death. And those 3 things were tobacco use, poor diet, and lack of physical activity, or as I've referred to them ever since, bad use of feet, forks, and fingers. So that's been my mantra. Feet, forks, and fingers are the master levers of medical destiny. 80% of the variance in total chronic disease risk, premature death. So it's about both years in life and life in years, right there. So it changed my career, because I looked at that and said, I had been thinking about doing clinical research in the customary way, which is, let me think of new erudite questions, boldly go where no one's gone before, ask about stuff nobody's thought to ask. And I looked at that paper and said, I can't justify it. We already know how to prevent 80% of premature deaths, 80% of the burden of chronic disease. How can I justify asking questions about the residual 20% we don't know when we're not using the 80% we do? I've got to devote my career to turning what we know into what we do. Knowledge isn't power if you don't put it to use. How do we translate our knowledge into routine action? And the rest is history. My career's been about that ever since. And we still have a long way to go. But make no mistake, we have known for literal decades that eating more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils, nuts, seeds, and drinking plain water when thirsty, getting routine physical activity, and avoiding toxins like tobacco would reduce the burden we see in the world around us of chronic disease by 80%. And for those listening, really important to reflect on what that means personally. I mean, if you kind of do the quick inventory of people you love, not people you know, but people you love, who've been touched by heart disease or cancer or dementia or stroke or diabetes. And all of us, find one or more, and some of us many, because these things are so prevalent. Well, what we're talking about is a world where 8 times in 10, we don't come up with anybody because it didn't happen. And that's the world we could bequeath to the next generation and the next. And since this is being recorded while we're still dealing with the COVID pandemic, really important to note, Ocean, that there's this massive overlap between chronic vitality and acute defense against threats like SARS-CoV-2. Most of the mortality burden, literally most, in the United States is related to the prior pandemic of cardiometabolic disease and obesity. There was an analysis by Dariush Mozaffarian and others in the Journal of the American Heart Association showing that if we had effectively addressed the cardiometabolic disease that was here all along, the United States hospitalization burden and death toll from COVID could have been reduced by more than 60%. So literally the majority of the toll of this pandemic is really a byproduct of the prior pandemic that's been hiding in plain sight all along.
So David, one of the things that occurs to me is that a lot of people struggle with implementing what they know. It's not just knowing what to do, but it's implementation. I mean, if all that was needed was everyone just needed to know that we need to eat more vegetables and less processed junk, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. But unfortunately, people know that, but they don't know how to do it. And I'm thinking of Yoda in one of the Star Wars movies saying, there is no try, there is just do, right? And a lot of people try, or they judge themselves and they feel guilt for not eating better. But at the end of the day, let's face it, donuts taste better than broccoli does to most people, right? So what are your thoughts about why it is that so many people are struggling to cross that bridge from knowledge to action?
So Yoda may have said, I think of the Nike ads, just do it too, right? So, it suffuses our culture, the idea that, if you just have the right priorities, you'll get it done. I disagree. So several things. First, I think sadly, Ocean, people are not confident in their knowledge that they know where there is, because they get a different story about that every week. There is a massive incentive, certainly for big food and big pharma, to keep us confused about diet, because if we got it right, they couldn't sell us junk food and we wouldn't need to take nearly so many drugs. But there's also a massive incentive for big publishing and big media, and the cottage industry there is in pseudo confusion. We don't want you to be confident you know what's what. We want you to tune in tomorrow to find out what's what. And then that won't be the permanent answer either, because then you wouldn't tune in the next day or the next week. So confusion actually is in the interest of a lot of large industries. I write extensively about this in The Truth About Food, my book that sends its proceeds to support the True Health Initiative. So I don't think people really confidently know where there is. I think kind of beneath that surface of pseudo confusion, everybody really does know that fruits and vegetables are good for them. So there's a little bit of genuine confusion and a little bit of collusion. As long as you guys keep saying we're supposed to be confused, I can tap into that and keep eating at Burger King and Dunkin' Donuts, which is what I really want to do anyway. Why do you really want to do that anyway? That's also important. That's evolutionary biology. When you say that donuts taste better to people than broccoli, why is that? Well, because we're adapted to get a reward for doing stuff that favors survival. And in the modern world, eating donuts certainly doesn't favor survival. But in a world where it was hard to get enough calories, where it was hard certainly to overeat sugar or overeat fat or overeat salt, finding salt, sugar, fat, and calories was a good thing. And when you eat something that is a concentrated dose of sugar and calories, it triggers those ancient reward systems which made sense in the Stone Age and no longer do. So you've got evolutionary biology working against you. Then you also have big food working actively against you. And the best current writing on this topic is Michael Moss, Pulitzer Prize winner, whose book, in fact, was called Salt, Sugar, Fat, and then his more recent book, Hooked, which tells the tale of how the food industry designs food to be as close to addictive as it possibly can be. And I particularly like his New York Times Magazine cover story, The Extraordinary Science of Addictive Junk Food, which distills that story down into a bite-sized morsel, if you will. So help yourselves. Google Moss addictive. You'll pull that story right up. And, when you are relying on your willpower to take what you know and turn it into what you do, you're working against highly paid scientists who serve the food industry and get a bonus if they can design food you can't stop eating until your arm gets tired from lifting it to your mouth. And then finally, what I'd say is think about all the stuff you know how to do that was a little hard to master. Let's start with the alphabet. We all make use of it every day, but in kindergarten or first grade, whenever it was, it was really torture. Getting from not knowing how to use the alphabet to knowing how to use the alphabet, there was real effort involved. We had to climb that hill. Now, on the other side of the hill was the promised land of literacy, and we've benefited from it our whole lives afterwards. Pick another example, less mental, more physical, riding a bike.
Right.
When we were learning how to ride a bike, we all fell off a few times. I mean, first of all, we had training wheels to help us out. We needed help and support. Even with the training wheels, we fell off and scraped our knees. And when we took the training wheels off, we fell off and scraped our knees again. But, a few lumps and bumps later, we knew how to ride a bike, and most of us have been enjoying that our entire lives ever since. Most things that matter, and, the alphabet matters, riding a bike matters, and lots of related things, driving a car, pick anything you like, do not just depend on willpower. They depend on skill power.
Yeah.
And I would argue that our culture has not focused nearly enough on the skill power required to eat well in spite of it all. How do you identify more nutritious options when you're shopping? How do you identify more nutritious options at a restaurant? How do you engage your family, particularly your kids, in healthy eating? How do you do this in a way that is convenient, economical, delightful, so you can love the food that loves you? On and on it goes. And there are answers to all of these. It's hard to pack them all into this brief conversation. I've spent my whole career exploring them, studying them, writing them. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
But the simple notion that if you want to eat well, it does begin with your will to get there from here.
Yeah.
It requires you to acknowledge that we know where there is, because we do. But then that will is not, okay, since I want to eat well, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it like Yoda or like Nike. No. What I'm going to use the will to do is identify reliable sources to teach me the skills I need to cook better, shop better, eat out better, because each incremental step I take toward eating better will contribute to an overhaul of my diet, which in turn will contribute to an overhaul of my vitality. And,
Yeah.
I run a company now, as you know, Diet ID, where we're committed to making diet a vital sign. And the reason for that is because diet is the single leading predictor variable of all-cause mortality, total chronic disease. No individual who loves other people should ignore it. It's the single most impactful way we can contribute vitality to the network of people we love by trying to eat better ourselves and share that. So hugely important. Important for communities, important for our culture at large, for governments, for employers. Everybody really needs to care about this. But I think everyone needs to recognize that when the food supply makes it so easy to eat badly, we need a whole lot of skill power for people to eat well. And then ultimately what we need is a better food supply so we don't have to work quite so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the comparison to riding a bike. I would add walking similarly. Something that is so hard at first, but becomes second nature eventually. And I want for everyone who's struggling right now with temptations, with longing for foods that don't love you back, with cravings, with all of those kinds of challenges. I just want to say, when you build habits and you build skills, it gets easier and easier to follow through. Like water goes in grooves, you get patterns in place, and eventually it really is your path of least resistance. And your saliva can actually change. And there are studies on this, which I think is pretty fascinating. It's people who eat kale for the first time, it tastes bitter. By about the 10th time, their saliva is changing and it gets sweeter on their taste buds because they're actually secreting certain proteins that digest it. And that to me is heartening.
Yeah, I totally agree. So as you likely know, I've described that phenomenon over the years as taste bud rehab. And I said taste buds are adaptable little fellas. When they can't be with the foods they're used to loving, they learn to love the foods they're with. It works in both directions. So, the big food absolutely can win you over to junk as food. It's junk, but essentially, if you get used to it, it's familiar. It becomes what you identify as the taste of food. And, so if Fruit Loops is what tastes like fruit to you and you eat actual fruit, it tastes weird. Thankfully, it works beautifully in the other direction. And I have 30 years of patient care experience, so I've tested this hypothesis many times over, not just with myself and my loved ones, but with patients. You can systematically trade up in almost any category, whether it's getting rid of soda and transitioning to seltzer or water, whether it's changing the specific mix of vegetables you're willing to eat, whether it's eating more beans and lentils and less beef. Your familiarity with a given array of flavors and foods is going to exert a gravitational force. It's what you know. And one of the most potent drivers, this too is in the literature, one of the most potent determinants of dietary preference around the world is familiarity. It explains why cultural diets differ so much and everybody likes what they like. It's not that Japanese and Americans and Mexicans and Indians have different biology or different taste buds. We have different cultures. So, it's either curries or chilies or raw fish or, but it's what you're used to that you learn to love. Well, you can transition to better food in any given category, from refined grains to whole grains, add vegetables. But exactly as you say, there's physiologic adaptation, you grow familiarity, and essentially, as your taste buds get used to the taste of wholesome food, junk starts to taste like junk. You really, it's no longer an effort to avoid it. People often ask me, because I practice what I preach, do you ever indulge? Come on, you ever cheat? I say, yes, I indulge, but I can't really say I ever cheat because most of the stuff that would qualify as cheating just doesn't taste good to me. I don't like super sweet stuff. I don't like really salty stuff. I mean, yeah, I indulge, but what I would call an indulgence, most people would say that's still pretty virtuous. Yeah, but I'm not doing it to be virtuous. I just prefer it. And everybody can get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift gears here, David. We've got a lot of questions from our Whole Life Club members that were submitted in advance, and I'd love to see how many we can get to of those. So what I'll ask you to do, I'll share these questions and I'll ask if we can aim for like super concise answers. And so it's kind of a shift.
That's a toughie for an academic, but
Okay, great. Well, the idea is you're here just to see if you've got some resources or ideas to share for folks. So,
absolutely.
So Donna said, I'm on a plant-based regimen and committed to living this way the rest of my life as carcinoid tumors are gone, but I'm faced with low bone marrow. I don't ever want to be this ill again if I can help it. Besides eating healthy, reducing stress, and regular exercise, can anything else be done or consumed to restore? I was given doctor's advice to eat liver, currently purchased from a family meat business near us. And I was also instructed to eat pea protein powder. Do you have any other particular suggestions?
So it's really hard to address this well without a great deal more information. Bone marrow depletion can be many different things. The bone marrow, for those who don't know, produces blood cells, in particular, red blood cells, white blood cells. And so, it has a high rate of metabolic turnover. Iron could be rate limiting. That may be the case for liver, but you can certainly get iron from other sources, both plant sources or supplementation. And if for some reason, and I can't tell from the question, there is a need for additional concentrated protein, pea protein is a great source. And I'm not generally a big fan of protein supplements because it's so easy to get enough protein for most of us from a balanced diet, including a plant exclusive diet. Christopher Gardner at Stanford has done some of the best work on that topic. But if you have a particular medical condition where you would benefit from additional protein, more than the rest of us need, a protein concentrate like pea protein is perfectly reasonable. But I think to do full justice to that very good question, I need to know a bit more about your personal medical history.
Yeah, absolutely. And well done on the brevity, David.
Thank you.
All right. So Thomas said, which is more beneficial? Amla powder, black raspberry powder, matcha green tea powder, and or psyllium husk powder, or maybe a mixture of all of them?
I have no idea. And I think that, and I say that, both with all due humility, but also because I'm offering a reality check. Better in what sense? What outcome are you trying to produce, right? So if you're asking, are there any studies in large groups of people over an extended period of time that randomize them to each of these supplements and define better in some operational way, less of X or more of Y, and showed that one was better than the other, there have been no such studies, right? So, what we have is mechanistic arguments about how these different supplements might be helpful, and then a whole lot of marketing hype. Whether it helps you, reach your conclusion or not, I don't know, but I don't take any of them. I eat an optimal diet, and I do take a few select supplements. It's hard, for example, to get a lot of long chain omega-3 in your diet unless you're eating fatty fish all the time. So I take an algae-based omega-3 supplement as an example, but I'm specifically trying to fill a gap in my diet. So you'd have to tell me what you mean by better, what it is you're looking for, and then we could see how the composition of each of those line up against. But there's a good chance you don't really need any of them if you're eating optimally.
Yeah, thank you. I will add, I've been pretty impressed with the studies on green tea, and matcha green tea powder is really a form of that. And I think black raspberry powder is super high in antioxidants, which is great. There are other sources of antioxidants. You can also eat raspberries or blueberries, or all the berries seem to be pretty fabulous.
They do.
And a psyllium husk powder, I'm not a huge fan of that because I think you can get lots and lots of fiber from whole plant foods. And the danger when you eat a concentrated fiber source like that is it can actually dry out your intestines unless you're getting in a lot of water. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have benefit for some people in some places. Thomas also asked, what is the effect of stem cells, both stem cells processed from our own body or stem cells from umbilical cords for older people, i.e. 65 plus, for health improvement? And what foods improve our stem cells in older age?
Well, the generation of stem cells is a native biological function. So I would say the only thing we know so far that is likely to enhance stem cell generation as a source of kind of body restoration throughout life is general health promotion, extending the health span. So, as long as your body is healthy and vital, its functions tend to be optimized. We will all age anyway, and these functions will slow down. A lot of things are just inevitable. Kidney function, the ability to filter toxins from water, declines with age. It's an age-related effect. Even in the healthiest of people, it goes down. Bone mineral density, even the healthiest, most active people go down. We age. So, inevitably the same will happen to stem cell regeneration. The rate of production will decline. So, in many ways, and I'll try to be very brief, I would say this question makes me think about many of the questions I get about detox. What can I do to detox my body? Take good general care of your body. It's richly endowed with the best detox machines that have ever been conceived. One is called the liver, another is called the spleen, another is called the gastrointestinal tract. I mean, these are powerful detox machines. Nothing technology has produced can rival them. We should just get out of the way. Take good care of them, they'll take good care of you. I would say much the same is true about the native biological function of cleaning out old cells and replenishing them, including pluripotent stem cells, which are the body's, essentially the originators of multiple cell lines.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry P. asked, is there anything we can do to help insurers, including Medicare, understand that covering preventive lifestyle medicine is more cost-effective than disease care medicine? I'm an RN working in a primary care clinic, and Medicare especially seems to only pay for expensive disease-specific medicine for chronic conditions, like diabetes, when they are completely preventable and often improved by lifestyle changes.
So thankfully, there's been some movement in that area, courtesy of the Diabetes Prevention Program, which I'm sure this apparently quite sophisticated audience is well aware of. Very briefly, $174 million randomized controlled trial sponsored by a branch of the NIH that showed that lifestyle intervention was twice as good at preventing diabetes as the best drug we had, metformin. And that's reimbursed by Medicare and most private insurers. And with the shift to telemedicine during the pandemic, more and more virtual delivery programs for the DPP are also being reimbursed. And so that's it. It's a great beachhead. But I think the general value proposition of lifestyle medicine is still sort of ours to prove. And I'm pleased to say we've been working on that very expressly at Diet ID. So we're able to capture diet quality measured objectively in about 60 seconds in people. And consequently, we can look at change in diet quality in a given population and see what does that do to markers of health risk, and how does that translate into dollars over time? Because we know the annual cost per person per year of diabetes, hypertension, coronary disease, et cetera. If you can change the risk factors that change those downstream outcomes, you can project cost savings. So we're doing that and have generated those data, and they're really very compelling. And we've been sharing those around. Others are working on similar things. So, I think we're close to making the case that if we address these upstream factors effectively, we improve diet quality, we improve lifestyle practices, the downstream savings, not just years in life in years, but dollars too, are enormous.
Yeah.
And so I think that new day is dawning. We still have work to do. Dean Ornish was obviously a pioneer here, showing that heart disease reversal could rival coronary bypass surgery, and getting CMMS to cover that. So, again, the DPP, the work of Dean, others, sort of helped establish these beachheads. It's now our job to make the more general case and advance that mission. But I think we are making progress.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very involved with supporting Wholesome Wave in their produce prescription program, which is gaining a lot of traction now. And research out of Tufts, you're probably familiar with it, found that, it could be extremely cost effective. So the notion of having people with certain conditions, if not everybody, but certainly people with certain conditions, being prescribed fruits and vegetables and having that be covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and making the case that that could actually save a lot of money from the Medicare, Medicaid program in the long run.
Well, listen, I love you and your dad and the work of the Food Revolution Network. I love Michelle Nishan and the work of Wholesome Wave as well. The only thing I would append to that, Ocean, is that we did a study some years ago at the Prevention Research Center at Yale, and we worked with colleagues at University of North Carolina. We looked at barriers to and facilitators of fruit and vegetable intake in a multi-ethnic cohort. And we found that cost was just one of many. A lot of people who aren't used to eating fruits and vegetables do okay with fruit, but not so well with vegetables, as you described, right? Kale will taste bitter and they're not used to it.
Yeah.
So there are other elements to overcome that beyond just, even if you make it completely free, or even if you pay people to eat it, they buy it and then throw it out. So there are other challenges there. And I think one of the ways to overcome that is, first of all, to raise awareness of this issue of taste bud rehab and skill power. But another is to try and shift diet, not just in the produce aisle, but to improve everything else, right? Whole grains instead of refined grains, better cereal, better bread, everything can be traded up, better drinks than sugar sweetened sodas and so forth. I love this work. I think there's a bigger value proposition. That same notion should be applied from soup to nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Produce.
Yeah. Rebecca said, I'm 95% whole foods plant-based and generally SOS free and well hydrated. I have soft, well-formed stools. However, I often experience uncomfortable gas in the evenings, and I often don't seem to be digesting my food well. I'm wondering about your opinions of the following topics. And she's got a bunch here. So we'll see how many we can get to. Maybe I'll just read them and you can address the ones that you think you can address effectively. Okay. She asked, fit for life vis-a-vis only eating fruit by itself versus after or in a meal, green smoothies and raw juices. So I guess the notion there is fruit, just nothing but fruit in the morning and eating fruit separate from other things.
Yeah. Generally, okay, you want to keep going or?
No, you go ahead. We can, yeah.
Well, first of all, in my 30 years of clinical experience, there's one thing that should never be on the menu, and that's dogma. And that's the idea that there's going to be one right answer, no matter what's going on with you personally. I don't believe that. So, the general principles of healthy eating pertain to all of us. But what's causing any one of us to have particular symptoms, whether it's related to diet specifically, timing of diet, sensitivity to particular foods, food allergies, something to do with stress, something to do with sleep, something to do with hormones and circadian, you can't know. It's N of one. It's just you. And, so if I were your physician, I would explore the specific triggers in you. And it might be a food allergy. We would do an elimination diet, so forth. I don't think these rules that are they're marketed to us as if I have found the one answer that's going to fix everybody. So, you can't eat fruit in combination with other foods. Nonsense. I mean, I eat fruit in combination with other foods every day, and I feel absolutely fine. And so my fruit and whole grain cereal is my standard breakfast, for example. I wouldn't want to unbundle the two. So I think that's dogmatic. I don't know. Would that help you? I guess it could, depending on what your sensitivity is, but I would say we need to understand the nature of the problem before we propose a specific remedy.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think some people have gas from legumes, other people don't, but for those who do, part of it is that they're not maybe soaked first. So we like to soak ours for 48 hours, changing the water every 12 and then pressure cook them. And that works for me. But sometimes people also have to start slow with adding a lot of fiber because it can create you're feeding the good bacteria, but there's also a lot of activity going on, which can also lead to gas. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in fact, there are specific proteins in most beans that are a little bit difficult to digest, and they can cause some GI distress in some people. And it has to do with enzyme activity, which varies, just like all biological properties vary. So, in fact, you can buy supplemental enzymes. Beano is basically the specific enzymes that address these hard to digest proteins in beans. You either need it or not. You propose another remedy, and that is you can alter, basically denature some of these hard to digest proteins with sufficient soaking and high pressure cooking. But again, in response to the individual question, does it have anything to do with beans? Are you even eating beans every day? Is it better on days you don't eat beans or not? All of this is what we'd have to probe to determine what is cause relative to this effect. And then that's where the remedy should be targeted. I think as a general issue, Ocean, what you're saying is exactly true. But again, as a physician, your job is to figure out for an individual patient, all right, let's chase this down in you before we jump to conclusions about a remedy that helps some people. Let's figure out the very specific aspects of the pattern in you. What days feel better? What days feel worse? What are the differences between those days, right? And this is something you can do with your health professional. If they're not going to propose this, you should. Can you help me figure out what the potential bad actors might be in my diet? And, then we can figure out the specific way to deal with it. It may not require you to remove a food from your diet, maybe just cook it differently, or perhaps rely on a supplement that helps you digest it better.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now we're going to continue with rapid, see how many we can get to in our last few minutes with you here. So Rebecca said, can you ever eat or drink too many greens? And also your opinion on raw versus cooked veggies.
I suppose the answer to too many is yes, because if you ate nothing but greens, you would have an unbalanced diet. They're all relatively low in protein. They're not good sources of omega-3 fatty acids for the most part, and on it goes. If I had to pick one word that characterizes a good diet, it's balance. And so, we need a distribution of food. So greens plus fruits, plus whole grains, plus beans, plus lentils, plus nuts, plus seeds, plus or minus whatever else you may add to a mixed diet. But, really, there is hybrid vigor there. So, yeah, if it unbalances your diet because it's excluding everything else, theoretically, that would be too much. In the context of a general balanced diet, it's hard to overeat greens. And let's face it, at the population level, we have exactly the opposite problem, not the problem of overeating greens. Second part of the question?
Raw versus cooked veggies.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. So again, take dogma off the menu. The simple fact is our species has been using fire and cooking for a very long time. You could consider that, almost a native Homo sapien trait. And so it's part of our evolutionary experience. So you're not doing anything at all modern and mischievous when you cook. You can destroy some nutrients with cooking. Some sensitive antioxidants can be destroyed. So you may reduce some of the antioxidant potential of vegetables when you cook them. On the other hand, there are some really important nutrients that are enhanced by cooking. One very specific example, this is the lightning round, lycopene, which is the carotenoid that makes tomato red. It's fat soluble. Combination of tomatoes in a tomato sauce with olive oil produces much more available lycopene than just eating raw tomatoes. So there really isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. I would say, if you've got some philosophical objection to cooking, yeah, you can eat well if you eat raw, but I think an optimal diet really allows for both.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually wrote an article. If you go to foodrevolution.org and search for raw cooked, you'll find our article where we look at, there's actually certain nutrients that are more bioavailable in certain foods cooked and some with raw. So but ultimately you won't want to spend your life just trying to follow the rules on that. Like the bottom line lesson is eat lots of good, healthy food, some raw, some cooked, and you'll probably do well.
Amen. I wrote a column much the same many years ago called Raw Food Diet Overcooked. And again, I think we're both saying the same thing, and that don't be dogmatic, really follow the evidence where it leads. And it doesn't require that there's one answer that's right for everybody all the time about only one way to do things. Yeah. Usually when you hear that, you ought to start backpedaling fast.
Right. Rebecca also asked about essentially intermittent fasting. She's asking, is 10 to 6 a good feeding window? And is it ideal to wait between meals, or can I eat when I'm hungry?
It's interesting. I mean, the question about GI distress, actually, some people, if they go for a long period between meals, are more prone to GI distress, and they actually do better with small meals frequently spaced. So again, no dogma. I view intermittent fasting as a tactic. So the strategy is eat well, have a healthy weight. That's the overarching goal. A tactic is, the specific steps you take to get there from here. For some people, it's really hard to control their total daily calorie intake, and much easier to say, I'm going to be less restrained 5 days a week and really restrained too, or I'm going to use a window defined by time per day to kind of box me in. That can work. And if it works well for you, I have no objection to it. There's no metabolic magic in intermittent fasting. It's been tested and it's failed the test. It's not clearly better than controlling your calorie intake every day, but it's not clearly worse either. And if it doesn't produce symptoms and it doesn't make you feel sluggish or cranky in between your meals, then absolutely. I think whether you do it by hour or by day, it's a perfectly reasonable tactic.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Alyssa asks, how would you recommend people get one's body off of the plateau set point, same weight forever? I do a lot of things right, but whenever I lose more than 3 pounds, my body jumps right back to a BMI of 30, where it seems I've been stuck forever. Is there a mental component here? How can I reset my body's?
Probably not a mental component, unless you're telling yourself little white lies about how well you're doing with diet or exercise, which, by the way, most of us tend to do. We also tend to overestimate our height and underestimate our weight. But this is normal human behavior. So that's possible. But no, the reason for the set point is, I'll give you a very quick analogy. Imagine a perfectly healthy, lean mouse and a perfectly healthy, lean horse, which needs to eat more every day. The horse, just because it's bigger. Same is true of us. As we shrink because we're losing weight, there's less of us. We're, less horse, more mouse. We need fewer calories just to maintain our weight. So you're on a diet, you're doing beautifully, you haven't come off the wagon, but your weight just won't budge. Well, that's because you're smaller. You now need fewer calories to maintain that weight. There's nothing psychological about that. It's physics. So what I generally recommend, you can restrict your diet even further, but what I generally recommend is a bit more resistance training. So up your exercise. So if you build a little muscle is a calorie burning machine. You'll burn more calories even in your sleep if you add just a little bit of muscle mass. And that will definitely take you off the plateau. And the other is, if you're healthy and you're exercising and you're fit and you're vital and you've restricted your diet as much as you're willing to, and you're a little heavier than you wish you were, maybe the best thing to do is to learn to love the skin you're in, which is also fine. Maybe the price you'd have to pay to drop your BMI another notch is just too high because, your native set point is a little higher. And, as long as you don't have overt health problems and you really are eating well and being active and your health is good, I think that's perfectly fine too. So, you'd have some choices. And again, if I were your doc, we'd sort of explore those issues together, but it's not psychological. It's a very well-established phenomenon rooted in physics and physiology.
Yeah, thank you. David, do you have time for one more question, or do we need to let you go?
One more question. I'll be able to
Okay. All right. So Robin said, I've been living sedentary lifestyle for a long time and I've had body trauma. My body went through so much and I may need to work with a body trauma somatic therapist so I can take the next step in my movement and exercise. What I want to know is there such a thing as a doctor or some kind of expert who could help people change their sedentary lifestyle to an active lifestyle? I've been trying to look for one for a long time and I wasn't sure if they exist. Any thoughts?
Well, Robin, first of all, I'm sorry about whatever the trauma was, and I wish you all the best overcoming it. I have two thoughts. First, I think this transition requires a holistic and compassionate approach. And my colleagues in the field of integrative medicine, and there are a number of academic integrative medicine centers around the country and world, are very much focused on that. So, essentially exploring the interface of what's physical, what's psychological, how they fit together, and what the best remedy is. So you could Google integrative medicine centers and see if there's one near you, and perhaps through the Food Revolution Network get more information about that. But I think there's a potential option there. The other is the medical specialty that is specifically focused on rehabilitating our bodies after we've been through any kind of trauma is called physiatry. And so a physiatrist would be a board certified specialist in this very discipline. So you could ask your doctor or any area hospital, is there a physiatrist available, and see about exploring this there. Without knowing the details, I don't know the specifics that would be best for you, but absolutely you should have hope. There are definitely trained professionals who can help you with this journey, and I wish you all the best.
David, thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight, for your leadership and helping to advance this movement. So many lives depend on the message that you and we are committed to bringing into the world. And I just want to say, as somebody who's been admiring your work for decades, and how heartening it is to feel the way that you are building clarity about the consensus. There are, of course, nuances and details for every human being, and that's critically important. Each of us is the only one of us on the entire planet. And just because some study says something helps most people most of the time, it doesn't mean it helps all people all of the time. And so I love how you hold the complexity and the nuance without losing the clarity of what are the common core principles that are, 80% of the benefit or 90% of the benefit comes right there. So I just want to thank you for your wisdom, your clarity, the simplicity, with which you hold complexity, and your incredibly brilliant and important leadership in the world.
That's so kind, Ocean. I really appreciate it. It's going to make my day. And, I'm just proud and honored to work with you and your dad, be a part of the fine work you're doing, to have this opportunity to address your audience. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone else, we're going to make a transition now. We're going to let Dr. Katz go here in a moment. And we're going to transition to let you know how you can apply all of this in your life. Because as we talked earlier, talking about Yoda saying there's no try, there's just do. How do you get the results so you can sustain a life of healthy living and healthy eating and make it your path of least resistance? Well, that's what Whole Life Club is all about. It's a membership community that Food Revolution Network birthed specifically to help folks implement and stay with their healthy living lifestyle. And here's the thing, we only open the doors for the general public twice each year. This is the last time in 2021. So if you are interested in learning more about how you can implement all of this and be a part of this very special membership community, then keep watching, and I'm going to tell you a little more about it. So WHOLE is an acronym. It stands for Welcoming Healthy Organic Lifestyle Empowerment. And we started this partly because so many people have information overload. There's all this data out there, all these studies, all these articles. Everyone's got an opinion about what you should be eating. And we want to help you develop clarity and action, simple, positive steps you can take day in and day out to get the results that you want. So really the goal of an event like this and all of Food Revolution Network's work, all of our courses, all of our summits, isn't just to give you information. It's to help you take action. And the reason we want to help you take action is so you can get results in your life. So that's what Whole Life Club is all about. Every single month in Whole Life Club, we've got a theme. Past themes have been on topics like brain health, heart health, gut health, anti-cancer living, blood sugar balance, boosting energy levels. And you get specific resources every single month in Whole Life Club. There's an action hour with a guest expert, including questions you can submit to our expert health revolutionary in advance. There's an action checklist that follows up from it with simple steps that were advocated in the session so you can apply them in your life. There's action of the week videos every single week, 52 times a year. I get to send out a video with a simple positive step you can take to help advance your health goals. Every week, there are 6 new fabulous, delicious recipes that tie to the theme of that month. And probably the most important part of all for a lot of people is the recipes. People at the end of the day want to know how to eat well and deliciously and simply. And the recipes are a constant, fabulous wind at your back. And they also come in a library. So when you join, you don't just get new content every month. You get our entire existing library with dozens of past action hours with leading health experts, with more than 500 incredible whole foods plant-based recipes that are all searchable. So you can look up recipes based on ingredient, based on cuisine, or maybe you just want to look for breakfasts or lunches or dinners or snacks or desserts. And you know that everything is going to be whole foods, plant-based, delicious, easy to prepare, and affordable. So really, Whole Life Club is kind of like having a wind at your back in a toxic food culture where so many forces are pushing us in the wrong direction. We created Whole Life Club to help you have steady, consistent backup support to help you keep making progress and moving forward towards your health goals. And the other part of it is community. You get to be a part of an incredibly supportive community, now almost 10,000 strong, of people from all over the world who are implementing these choices. And the community is moderated by our team of dietitians and health professionals and coaches so that you can ask questions and get answers and get resources and get support. So whatever you're struggling with now or in the future, or even what your loved ones are struggling with, this is a place for you to ask for feedback and also share new recipes, new innovations, new breakthroughs, and have people celebrating your success with you. We conducted a survey a little while back looking at what kind of impact Whole Life Club members were experiencing. How was it actually showing up in their life? Because you know what? We're not just interested in knowledge, and we're also not just interested in action. We're interested in results. What does it actually mean for people? So what we found was that on average, our participants were losing excess weight. They were getting more energy. They were getting off meds they no longer needed. They were feeling more peer support, more social connection, less lonely, more solid on their healthy eating path, and they were eating better more consistently. So if you can relate to wanting any of that, if you can relate to wanting maybe some support in your healthy eating journey, then this right now is your time. You see, we're having a series of action hours this week. Monday will be on with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, and Wednesday with Dr. Kim Williams. And there are a whole new raft of people who will be joining in Whole Life Club. So we opened the doors with an incredible offer this week only. This is the last chance, again, to get into Whole Life Club for the rest of 2021 with the doors wide open like this. The only other way is sometimes with specific courses that we sell. People can jump in at that point with a 3-month trial. Other than that, there's no other way in this year. So this is it. And there's an incredible price right now, which is locked in. So your price will not go up, even if we need to raise the price in the future for everybody else. As long as you keep your membership active, you're in there. And also, the price comes with a 60-day money back guarantee. So if you decide for any reason you don't love it, just let us know and you get every penny back. No questions asked. This is only open until Thursday. So this really is your time. And if you're interested, then go ahead and click the button, find out more, and join us in Whole Life Club. Recently, I got to chat with one of our members. Her name is Kathy. She's from Iowa. She said she wanted to share how Whole Life Club had impacted her life. Now, let's be clear here. This is just one individual sharing her story. What happens to you might be different. But when you treat your body right, and when you feed it the right fuel, amazing things really can happen. So now let's go ahead and roll the video here so you can see what it means to Kathy. Here we go.
I am Kathy, and I'm from Burlington, Iowa now. I'm a kind of a recent transplant. I've just been here 3 years.
And when you came into this way of eating, and Whole Life Club in particular, what were some of the biggest health or lifestyle challenges that you were facing, and how did those impact your life?
Well, my challenges before joining the Whole Life Club were not uncommon. I joined Weight Watchers umpteen times in the last few decades, and up and down with the weight, and but I was just addicted to fast food. I loved fast food from the day McDonald's came to Sacramento, California when I was 15 years old. I just loved it. So I knew I was not eating well, but I didn't want to know, what the downside was of that kind of eating. But then all of a sudden I wanted to know.
And so what happened when you wanted to know? What did you discover, and how did it change your life?
It just resonated more with me, the whole foods, plant-based eating. So at that point, that was back in November, the end of November, I kind of became vegetarian and as much vegan as possible. And so I just really started eating differently. So much fewer processed foods, a lot more fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains. But it's still a work in progress, I have to tell you. I still, one thing I love about your approach and your tone is that you don't have to be perfect right away. It's just a journey. It's toward whole food, plant-based, and any steps are worthwhile. Yeah. And I love that it's healthy for me and that it's healthy for the animals. I never wanted to kill animals. I never wanted to know about those factory farms. And it's good for the environment. And I'm, like so many people, feeling a little helpless these days with the state of the world. And so it makes me feel really good that I'm contributing in these good ways to things outside of myself.
Wonderful. What have you found in Whole Life Club specifically that has been helpful to you in the journey?
Oh, just information. I have to say, we've replaced our cookware with ceramic. We've replaced our food storage with glass, and I have a water purifier on the counter, and I mean, all kinds of lifestyle things. But just on a regular basis, I'm surprised that I love your emails on all different topics on avocado. I love avocados, so I found out so much good information about that. It just seems, I'm just surprised. Usually I don't read long emails, but I'm really fascinated and interested in all the information that just comes on a regular basis. And I have to say, I think what I like the best about Whole Life Club are the action hours, because I love just being repeatedly motivated by these knowledgeable, reasonable, dedicated people in their fields that do such a good job of bringing us that information that we need to know on all the related topics.
Thank you. Have you found benefit to your health in these months since you've been on this path so directly? And how is that showing up in terms of your weight, your vitality, things you can do, etc.?
I've definitely felt benefits since I've been with Whole Life Club. I have just lost 30 pounds that really was so effortless compared to past weight loss experiences, because I don't have to weigh and measure and write down anything. I just changed what I'm eating, and that kind of took care of that. And so since I lost the 30 pounds, I just have more energy, and I can run. I can actually run with my heels up in the air, which I haven't done in, a few decades. I don't think. I was just, jogging and lumbering along at the best. But I just have added more exercise and movement because I want to move. That's amazing.
Fantastic. Anything you would say to somebody who is considering joining Whole Life Club?
I would say joining Whole Life Club is totally worth it. It's motivating. If this is a change you want to make in your life, then it takes the place of a support group, kind of, because you just get constant support and information and encouragement for adopting this new lifestyle or heading in this new direction that you want for your life.
Beautiful. How has, if at all, your participation in this community affected others in your family or your friends or community?
Well, my participation in Whole Life Club has affected my husband, whom I live with, of course, and his father, who is why we moved here in the first place. So those two are my closest eating partners. And they will go wherever I want to go, and they will eat whatever I put in front of them. And my husband is obese, and he's pre-diabetic, and he's not that worried about it. But he's just, I guess by being around me, I think he's eating fewer processed foods, but he is eating more good foods because we have good foods in the house now, and that is what I fix. And so just by kind of association, he's adopted some better habits. Also, last week we went on vacation with two morbidly obese friends, and just watching them eat what they eat and drink what they drink, it made me feel good by comparison that I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And by the end of the vacation, the man said, well, Kathy's inspired me to eat this salad. So he got a big salad instead of, his, what he usually would eat. And then his wife also once had a big salad, where that was the only time I'd seen her eat a salad. So, and we went on a bike ride, which I guess they haven't been on bikes in years and years. So, I guess it does make a difference just being around people that, it just raising awareness. Here there are a lot of church meals that we go to, and I don't want to eat any of those foods. So, people ask about it, and I try and be just as nice and accepting and non-judgmental about it, but at least they know that I'm watching what I eat, and, and they can see that it's made a difference.
Well, thanks so much to Kathy for sharing those inspiring words. And now I want to say this for everybody watching. If you're feeling inspired and want to implement what you're learning, then right now is a very special opportunity for you, right here and right now, to step forward. The doors are open for this opportunity this week only until Thursday, to join Whole Life Club and make this happen in your life. So if you are feeling intrigued or curious, or if you're feeling a yes inside you, then go ahead and click the button to find out more and join in right now. And I want to say I am so grateful to be a part of this community, now close to 10,000 strong, supporting each other. And you know what? We aren't just supporting each other. We aren't just healing our own personal lives. We're also supporting everyone we interact with, because food is social. And when you take a stand for what you believe in, you become a leader in your community and in your family, in the ecosystem that you inhabit. And so you don't just uplift yourself. We have so many studies showing that who we hang out with tends to have a huge impact on our own health outcomes. Well, here's the good news. When you become a leader, when you step into this work, everybody you love can reap the benefits too, because they'll be inspired by your example. They'll see your results and they'll want to follow you. And not everyone will follow you exactly, but more and more over time, we see this. Leaders inspire others. So it's time to be a leader. It's time to be a food revolutionary. And if Whole Life Club can help you accomplish that goal in your life, then I am so thrilled to welcome you with open arms and an open heart to join us for your whole life. So now we're nearing the end of this action hour. Make sure to join us on Monday for our next action hour in this series. We're going to be on with Dr. Will Bulsiewicz with a focus on scientifically proven lifestyle habits for healing and maintaining a healthy gut. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be on with one of the world's most impeccably credentialed cardiologists, Dr. Kim Williams. It's going to be an incredible week, and I am so thrilled to be sharing it all with you. So if any of this interests you, come on back for the rest of the Action Hour series and make sure you check out Whole Life Club. I look forward to seeing you there. And I look forward to working with you for healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. Let's do this. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club. Click the link to find out more and to join in now.